The huge metal station spun slowly in the dark of space. Zephyria Station was bigger than most cities. Ships came and went like busy insects around a bright flower. Inside the station, thousands of different beings lived and worked together. Commander. Vexthara stepped off his ship onto the station's main dock. He was 8 feet tall with dark green skin that looked like armor. His claws were as long as human fingers and sharp enough to cut through steel. His yellow eyes could see in the dark and spot the smallest movement from far away. The other beings on the dock moved away from him. They could not help it. Their bodies told them he was dangerous. Vexthara was a Krillian, and his people were the best hunters in the galaxy. They had hunted on 1,000 worlds. They had never met a creature they could not kill. Vexthara walked through the station's busy streets. The air smelled of different foods, strange perfumes, and machine oil. Aliens of every shape and size filled the walkways. Some had fur, some had scales, some had skin like humans. All of them were much smaller than him. He passed a group of Delphani merchants. They looked like small lizards walking on 2 legs. Their bones were thin and would break easily. One look at Vexthara made them press against the wall. Their hearts beat fast. He could smell their fear. A few Therian workers moved cargo boxes nearby. They were slow and fat. Their thick arms were strong, but they moved like they were walking through water. Easy prey, Vexthara thought. Too easy to be fun. The Krillian commander had not come here to hunt. Not yet. He was scouting. His people wanted to know what kinds of creatures lived in this part of space. They wanted to know which ones would make good sport. Vexthara as people did not hunt just for food. They hunted because they loved the chase. They loved the fear in their prey's eyes. They loved the moment when a creature realized it could not escape. It was what made them feel alive. He walked into the main market area. The ceiling was high and curved like the inside of a great dome. Shops and restaurants lined the walls. The center was filled with stalls where traders sold goods from across the galaxy. Vexthara's sharp eyes moved over the crowd. His training kicked in. He began to sort the beings around him. Weak ones here, slow ones there, ones that might fight. Back over in that corner, most of the creatures here had never seen real danger. They lived safe lives on peaceful worlds. They traded goods and made deals. They had forgotten what it felt like to be hunted. A group of Althean diplomats sat at a table nearby. They had blue skin and large eyes. They spoke in quiet voices about trade agreements. When Vexthara walked past their table, they stopped talking. Their breathing became quick and shallow. Perfect, he thought. They would run fast, but not far. They would make good sport. He moved deeper into the market. A Vorthan engineer worked on a broken machine. His people were smart but weak. They fixed things with their minds, not their bodies. The engineer's thin arms shook as he held his tools. He had noticed the Krillian watching him. Vexthara smiled, showing his sharp teeth. The engineer dropped his tools and hurried away. The commander kept walking. He was in no hurry. Good hunters took their time. They learned about their prey before they struck. He stopped at a food stall and bought a drink. The seller was a small creature with 4 arms. It could barely reach the counter. Its voice squeaked when it spoke. "What can I get you, sir?" the creature asked. Its voice shook. "Something cold," Vexthara said. His voice was deep and rough. The seller's 4 hands moved quickly. It mixed a drink and pushed it across the counter. When Vexthara reached for it, the seller jumped back. Vexthara drank slowly. The liquid was sweet and cold. He watched the crowd while he drank. So many choices. So many different kinds of prey. Then something caught his eye. In the corner of the market, a human sat alone at a small table. Vexthara had heard of humans, but had never seen one up close. The human was not very big. He had brown hair and tan skin. His clothes were plain and practical. He looked like any other space worker. But something about him was different. The human did not look afraid. He did not look around nervously like the others. He sat calmly, reading something on a small screen. A cup of dark liquid sat on the table in front of him. Vexthara moved closer. The human did not look up. He did not seem to notice the large predator watching him. This was strange. All creatures could sense danger. It was how they stayed alive. The Krillian commander studied the human more carefully. His name was Jake Morrison, according to the station records Vexthara had accessed. He was a cargo hauler. He moved goods between planets in the outer rim. Jake looked ordinary. His hands were rough from work. His face was weathered by years in space. But there was something in the way he sat, something in the way he held his shoulders. Vexthara's hunting instincts began to stir. This one was different. This one might be interesting. The commander finished his drink and moved closer to the human's table. Other beings in the market moved away as he passed. They whispered to each other in their own languages. Some left the market entirely, but Jake Morrison did not move. He did not look up from his reading. He took a sip of his drink and turned to the next page on his screen. Vexthara stood just 10 feet away now, close enough to strike, close enough to see the human's face clearly. Jake had calm eyes. His breathing was steady. His heart rate was normal. He showed no signs of fear or stress. This was wrong. This was not how prey was supposed to act. For the first time in his life, Commander Vexthara felt confused. Every creature in the galaxy feared his people. Every creature ran or fought or begged for mercy. But this human just sat there reading, as if the most dangerous predator in the galaxy was not watching him. Vexthara's claws twitched, his muscles tensed. Every instinct told him to attack. But something made him hesitate. Something about this human was very, very wrong. Vexthara moved to a better position. He wanted to watch the human without being seen. He had learned to read body language from 1,000 different species. Fear always showed itself in the same ways. Hearts beat faster. Breathing became quick and shallow. Muscles tensed up. Sweat appeared on skin. Eyes moved around, looking for escape routes. The human showed none of these signs. Jake Morrison sat at his table like he owned the place. His hands were relaxed. His breathing was slow and deep. He read his screen with the same calm focus that others used to read bedtime stories. Vexthara decided to test him. He moved closer, letting his claws scrape against the metal floor. The sound was sharp and threatening. Every other creature in the market heard it and moved away. Jake did not even blink. The Krillian commander tried a different approach. He let out a low growl. It was a sound that had made brave warriors wet themselves with fear. It was a sound that said death was coming. Jake turned a page on his screen. Vexthara's confusion grew. This was not normal. This was not how the universe worked. Predators scared prey. That was the natural order. He began to study the other beings. In the market, a group of Althean diplomats sat at a table across the room. Their blue skin had gone pale. Their large eyes kept darting toward the Krillian. They whispered to each other in worried voices. "Should we leave?" One asked. "I heard Krillians eat sentient beings," another said. "Maybe we should call security." The third suggested. Perfect prey responses, Vexthara thought. They were all ready, planning to run. He looked at a Vorthan engineer near the wall. The small creature was pretending to work on a broken machine, but his thin hands shook as he held his tools. Sweat dripped from his forehead. He kept glancing at the exits. Another good target. Vexthara's eyes found a Thurian merchant counting money at a cash register. The fat creature's breathing was heavy. His thick fingers fumbled with the coins. He had already started moving toward the back of his shop. All normal, all expected, all boring, but the human was different. Jake Morrison had finished reading and was now looking at star charts on his screen. He traced routes with his finger. He made notes in a small book. Vexthara moved closer again. He was now only 6 feet away, close enough to smell the human scent, close enough to hear his heartbeat. The heartbeat was steady, slow, calm. This made no sense. The commander tried to remember what he knew about humans. His people had files on every species in the galaxy. Humans were relatively new to space. They had only been traveling between stars for a few hundred years. They were supposed to be weak. They had thin skin that cut easily. They had no claws or fangs. They could not see in the dark. They could not run very fast, but they had spread across the galaxy like a virus. They built cities on dead worlds. They made friends with species that had been enemies for thousands of years. They seemed to be everywhere. Vexthara had never understood why. Now he was starting to wonder if the files were wrong. He decided to get closer. He walked to the empty table next to Jake's. The metal chair groaned under his weight. As he sat down, Jake looked up from his screen for the first time. Their eyes met. Vexthara had looked into the eyes of many creatures just before he killed them. He had seen fear, anger, desperation, and hope. He had seen creatures beg for mercy. He had seen them try to bargain for their lives. Jake's eyes showed none of these things. Instead, they showed something that made the Krillian's skin crawl. They showed evaluation. The human was studying him the same way he was studying the human. Jake's eyes moved over Vexthara's body. They noted the position of his claws. They measured the reach of his long arms. They calculated the distance between them. The human was not seeing a predator. He was seeing a threat to be assessed. "You're not from around here," Jake said. His voice was calm and friendly. Vexthara did not answer. He was too surprised. Prey was not supposed to start conversations. "Krillian, right?" Jake continued. "I've heard about your people, great hunters." The way he said great hunters was strange. It did not sound like fear or respect. It sounded like a professional opinion. "You seem nervous," Jake said. "First time on a mixed species station?" Nervous? Vexthara had never been nervous in his life. He was the one who made others nervous. "I am not nervous," he said. His voice came out rougher than he intended. "Good," Jake said. "These places can be overwhelming. So many different species all crammed together. Takes some getting used to." He went back to his star charts like nothing had happened. Vexthara stared at him. This was impossible. The human was treating him like a tourist, asking for directions. Commander decided to try intimidation. He leaned forward and let his claws extend. They made a clicking sound as they touched the metal table. Jake glanced up. "Nice claws," he said. "Natural weapons are always more reliable than artificial ones." Vexthara's claws retracted automatically. No one had ever called his claws nice before. They were supposed to be terrifying. "Are you a warrior?" Vexthara asked. "Used to be," Jake said. "Colonial Marines. Did my time and got out. Now I haul cargo." Colonial Marines. Vexthara had heard that name before. The files said they were human soldiers. They fought in wars on distant planets. What kind of wars? Vexthara asked. Jake looked up again. This time his eyes were different. Harder. The kind where things try to kill you, and you have to kill them first. For the first time in his life, Vexthara felt something new. It was not fear exactly. It was more like respect. This human had been a warrior. He had fought and survived. "What kind of things?" the Krillian asked. "All kinds," Jake said. "Some were bigger than you. Some were faster. Some were smarter. Some hunted in packs. He paused and looked directly at Vexthara. Some thought they were the apex predators in the galaxy. The words hit like a physical blow. Vexthara's people were the apex predators. They were the top of the food chain. They were the hunters, not the hunted. But this human was suggesting otherwise. What happened to them? Vexthara asked. Jake smiled. It was not a cruel smile. It was sad and tired. They learned that being the biggest predator on your homeworld doesn't mean much in a galaxy full of predators. Vexthara felt something cold in his stomach. For the first time in his life, he wondered if his people had made a mistake coming here. Jake went back to his charts. Nice talking to you, he said. Enjoy your stay on the station. The conversation was over. The human had dismissed him. Vexthara sat there for a long moment. His entire worldview was cracking. Everything he thought he knew about prey and predators was wrong. This human was not prey. He was something else entirely. Something dangerous. Vexthara left the market, but could not stop thinking about the human. He went back to his ship and accessed the Krillian military database. He needed to know more about these creatures called humans. The files were bigger than he expected. Much bigger. Humans had been in space for only 300 years. But in that short time, they had fought more wars than most species fought in 1,000 years. They had battles with space pirates, alien invaders, and rebel colonies. They had fought creatures that most beings only saw in nightmares. Vexthara. Read about something called the Void War. Humans had fought against creatures that lived in the empty space between stars. These creatures were made of living darkness. They ate light and fed on fear. The humans had won. He read about the Hive Wars. Humans had fought against insect-like aliens that worked as one giant mind. The insects had ships that could eat planets. They had billions of soldiers that felt no pain or fear. The humans had won that war too. There were dozens of other wars. Hundreds of battles. Every time humans faced something bigger, stronger, or more dangerous than themselves. And every time they won. Vexthara found something even more disturbing. Humans did not just fight when they were attacked. They went looking for fights. They called it exploration, but it was really hunting. They climbed mountains that could kill them. They dove into oceans full of monsters. They built cities in places that no sane creature would live. They seemed to think that danger was fun. The Krillian commander closed the files. His head hurt from thinking too hard. Everything he believed about the universe was wrong. His people thought they were the ultimate predators. But humans were something else. They were predators that had learned to hunt predators. He decided to go back to the station. He needed to see the human again. He needed to understand what Jake Morrison really was. The market was still busy when he returned. But now he saw it differently. He noticed things he had missed before. The station security guards were mostly human. They walked through the crowds with calm confidence. Other species moved out of their way without being asked. Not because they were afraid, but because they respected them. A group of human traders sat at a table discussing business. They spoke in quiet voices, but their eyes constantly moved around the room. They were watching everything. They were ready for trouble. Near the food court, a human woman played with her children. She looked like any other mother. But Vexthara noticed how she positioned herself. She could see all the exits. She could reach her children in seconds if needed. Even the human children were different. They played games that looked like combat training. They laughed and ran around, but they were learning to fight. Vexthara found Jake Morrison at the same table. The human was eating a simple meal while reading his charts. He looked up when the Krillian approached. "Back again?" Jake asked. "Did you find what you were looking for?" "I am not sure," Vexthara said. He sat down at the same table as before. "You seem troubled," Jake said. Something wrong? Vexthara did not know how to answer. How could he explain that his entire species had been wrong about everything? I have been reading about your people, he said finally. Jake nodded. What did you think? You fight a lot of wars. We do, Jake agreed. More than we'd like. Why? Do you fight so much? Jake put down his fork and looked at the Krillian. Because someone has to. I do not understand. Jake gestured around the market. You see all these different species here? They're all different. Some are strong, some are smart, some are fast, but most of them are peaceful. They just want to live their lives. Vexthara nodded. This was true. But not everyone in the galaxy is peaceful, Jake continued. Some species like to hurt others. Some like to conquer and destroy. Some like to hunt other sentient beings for sport. The words hit Vexthara like a punch to the stomach. Jake was talking about his people. About the Krillians. So humans fight them, Jake said. We fight the bullies so the peaceful ones can live in peace. But humans are not the strongest species, Vexthara said. Many others are bigger and more powerful. Jake smiled. Being the biggest doesn't make you the strongest. Being the strongest doesn't make you the winner. Then what does? Being willing to do what needs to be done. Being willing to pay the price. Being willing to stand up when everyone else backs down. Vexthara thought about this. Is that why you became a soldier? Partly, Jake said. But mostly because I was good at it. Good at killing? Good at protecting, Jake corrected. Killing is just a tool. Like your claws or your teeth. What matters is what you use them for. The Krillian commander felt confused again. My people use their claws for hunting. For sport. Jake's eyes grew cold. And what do you hunt? Vexthara did not answer. He could not answer. Let me guess, Jake said. You hunt sentient beings. Intelligent creatures that can think and feel. And suffer. The words hung in the air between them. Vexthara felt ashamed, though he did not understand why. My people are the apex predators, he said weakly. No, Jake said quietly. Your people are bullies. There's a difference. The words stung worse than any physical blow. Vexthara had never been called a bully before. His people were proud warriors. They were the hunters of the galaxy. We are strong, he said. So are we, Jake replied. But we use our strength differently. How? Jake stood up from the table. Come with me. I'll show you. They walked through the market together. It was a strange sight. The huge Krillian warrior walking beside the ordinary human. Other beings stared at them, but no one interfered. Jake led him to a small medical clinic. Through the window, they could see human doctors treating patients. A Delphani child with a broken arm. An elderly Therian with breathing problems. A Vorthan engineer with burns on his hands. Those doctors could be making money on rich colony worlds, Jake said. Instead, they're here treating anyone who needs help. They walked to the security office. Human guards monitored screens showing every part of the station. They watched for trouble. They kept everyone safe. Those guards could be fighting in profitable wars, Jake said. Instead, they're here making sure a lizard merchant doesn't get robbed by space pirates. They passed a human teacher leading a group of alien children. She was teaching them to read in their own languages. The children came from a dozen different species, but they all laughed at her jokes. She could be on Earth teaching human children, Jake said. Instead, she's here making sure refugee kids don't grow up ignorant. Vexthara began to understand. Humans were not just warriors. They were protectors. They used their strength to defend others, not to hurt them. Your people could do the same, Jake said. You're strong and fast and smart. You could be protectors instead of predators. Vexthara thought about this. But hunting is what we do. It is who we are. No, Jake said. It's who you chose to be. You can choose to be something else. They walked back to the market in silence. Vexthara's mind was spinning. Everything he thought he knew about strength and power was wrong. When they reached Jake's table, the human sat down and went back to his charts. "Think about it," he said. "You have a choice to make." Vexthara stood there for a long moment. He looked around the market at all the different species living and working together. He saw the human guards keeping them safe. He saw the human doctors helping the sick. For the first time in his life, he wondered if his people had chosen the wrong path. Maybe it was not too late to choose a different one. Vexthara went back to his ship again. He needed to think. He needed to understand what was happening to him. He had come to this station to scout for prey. Instead, he had found something that shook his entire worldview. The humans were not prey. They were not even competition. They were something his people had never encountered before. He opened the database again and dug deeper. He found military reports from species that had fought against humans. The reports all said the same thing. Humans were terrifying in battle. Not because they were bigger or stronger. They were terrifying because they never gave up. As Zephyrian General had written, "We thought we had won. We had destroyed their fleet. We had invaded their colonies. We had killed millions of them, but they kept fighting. They turned their cargo ships into weapons. They taught their children to make bombs. They fought us with rocks and sticks when they ran out of bullets." A Krellian admiral had written, "Humans do not fight like other species. Other species fight to win. Humans fight to survive. When you corner them, they become more dangerous, not less. When you kill their leaders, new ones take their place. When you destroy their cities, they build new ones. They are impossible to defeat because they refuse to be defeated." Vexthara found psychological profiles of human soldiers. The reports were disturbing. Humans formed deep emotional bonds with their fellow warriors. They would die to protect each other. They would sacrifice themselves to save strangers. But more disturbing was what happened when humans saw innocent beings in danger. The reports called it protective fury. Humans became exponentially more dangerous when they were defending others. Krillian scientists had written, "We captured a human soldier and tortured him for information. He said nothing. We brought in prisoners from his unit and threatened to kill them. He broke immediately. Humans will endure any pain to protect others. This makes them unpredictable and extremely dangerous." Vexthara closed the files. He felt sick. His people had been planning to hunt in human space. They had no idea what they were walking into. He decided to send a message to the Krillian High Command. He would recommend that they avoid human territory. He would tell them that humans were not suitable prey. But as he started to write the message, he heard a commotion outside his ship. He went to investigate. In the station's cargo bay, a small crowd had gathered. Vexthara could see Jake Morrison in the center of the group. The human was helping to unload medical supplies from a transport ship. Vexthara listened to conversation. The supplies were for a refugee camp on a distant planet. The refugees were fleeing from a civil war. They had no money to pay for medicine. "The shipping company wants double the normal rate," someone was saying. "They say it's too dangerous to go to that system." "How much do they want?" Jake asked. 50,000 credits. Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. "I'll take the job." "Jake, you can't afford that," another human said. "Your ship barely makes enough to cover fuel costs." "I'm not doing it for the money," Jake replied. "I'm doing it because those people need help." Vexthara watched as Jake began loading the medical supplies onto his cargo ship. The human worked quickly and efficiently. He checked each box to make sure nothing was damaged. Other humans came to help. They did not ask for payment. They just started carrying boxes. Even some of the alien species joined in. Within an hour, Jake's ship was loaded and ready to go. The human pilot climbed into his cockpit and started the engines. Vexthara realized something that made his blood run cold. Jake was going to fly alone into a war zone. He was going to risk his life to deliver medicine to people he had never met. This was not the behavior of prey. This was not even the behavior of a normal predator. This was the behavior of something much more dangerous. Something that fought not for itself, but for others. As Jake's ship lifted off from the station, Vexthara made a decision. He walked quickly to the station's communication center and sent an urgent message to the Krillian fleet. "Do not enter human space," he wrote. "Do not engage human vessels. Do not hunt human colonies. These are not prey animals. They are guardians. They are protectors. They will fight to the death to defend the innocent." He paused, then added, "We are not the apex predators we thought we were. In human space, we would be the prey." The message was sent. Vexthara felt relief wash over him. He had probably saved his people from a war they could not win, but he also felt something else. Something he had never felt before. He felt respect for an enemy he had never fought. Captain Luis Rodriguez sat in the station security office, watching the screens. He had been monitoring the situation between the Krillian and Jake Morrison. He had been ready to intervene if necessary, but it had not been necessary. Jake had handled the situation perfectly. He had shown strength without aggression. He had made the alien understand without making him feel threatened. "Sir," one of his officers said, "the Krillian is leaving the station." Rodriguez nodded. "Good. Alert the other stations in the sector. Let them know we had a Krillian scout here. Tell them to be ready." "Do you think there will be trouble?" the officer asked. Rodriguez thought about Jake Morrison flying into a war zone to deliver medicine. He thought about the human doctors treating alien patients. He thought about the human teachers helping refugee children. "No," he said finally. "I don't think there will be trouble. I think they're starting to understand what we really are." The officer looked confused. "What do you mean, sir?" Rodriguez smiled. "We're not the monsters they were expecting. We're something much worse." "Worse?" "We're the good guys. And that scares them more than any weapon ever could." Vexthara's ship moved away from the station. He looked back at the spinning structure through his view screen. Inside those metal walls, dozens of species lived and worked together in peace. They were protected by humans who asked for nothing in return. His people would never understand. They saw the galaxy as a place where the strong hunted the weak. They could not imagine a species that used its strength to protect others. But Vexthara understood now. He had seen the truth with his own eyes. Humans were not prey. They were not predators either. They were something new. Something that had never existed before in the galaxy. They were hope. And that made them the most dangerous species of all. 3 weeks later, Vexthara received a message from the Krillian High Command. They wanted to know why he had recommended avoiding human space. They wanted details about human military capabilities. Vexthara sat in his ship's communication room and thought about how to answer. How could he explain what he had learned? How could he make them understand? He decided to tell them a story. "I watched a human fly into a war zone to deliver medicine to refugees," he wrote. "He asked for no payment. He expected no reward. He risked his life because strangers needed help. This is not the behavior of prey. This is not the behavior of a predator. This is the behavior of something we have never encountered before." He sent the message and waited. The reply came quickly. "You are being emotional," the High Command wrote back. "Humans are weak. They have no claws, no fangs, no natural weapons. They are perfect prey." Vexthara stared at the message. They still did not understand. He wrote back, "A human soldier will die to protect a stranger. A human parent will fight an army to save their child. A human doctor will treat an enemy soldier. They are not weak. They are something much more dangerous than strong. What could be more dangerous than strong? Came the reply. Righteous, Vexthara wrote. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison was flying through the contested system toward the refugee camp. His cargo hold was full of medical supplies and food. His fuel tanks were nearly empty, but he had enough to make the trip. He had made this run dozens of times before. Different camps, different planets, different wars. But always the same cargo. Hope for people who had lost everything. His communication system beeped. An incoming message from an unknown source. Human vessel, this is Commander Vexthara of the Krillian Fleet. Do you copy? Jake was surprised. He had not expected to hear from the alien again. I copy, he replied. What can I do for you? I wanted to thank you, Vexthara said. You opened my eyes to something important. Just doing my job, Jake replied. No, Vexthara said. You were doing much more than that. You were showing me what it means to be a guardian. Jake was quiet for a moment. We all have to choose what we want to be, he said finally. I chose to be someone who helps. My people chose to be hunters, Vexthara said. But I am beginning to think we chose wrong. It's never too late to choose differently, Jake said. There was a long pause. Then Vexthara spoke again. There are pirates in this system, he said. They have been attacking refugee ships. You should be careful. Jake checked his sensors. He could see several ships moving toward his position. They were too far away to identify, but their course was suspicious. I see them, he said. Thanks for the warning. I could escort you to the refugee camp, Vexthara offered. My ship is armed. Jake was surprised again. You would do that? I want to try being a guardian instead of a predator, Vexthara said. This seems like a good place to start. The two ships flew together through the dangerous system. Jake's small cargo. Hauler stayed close to Vexthara's powerful warship. The pirates saw them coming and decided to look for easier prey. They reached the refugee camp without incident. The camp was a collection of temporary shelters on a barren planet. Thousands of beings lived there, waiting for the war to end so they could go home. Jake landed his ship near the medical center. Volunteers rushed out to help unload the supplies. They were mostly humans, but there were other species too. All of them worked together to help the refugees. Vexthara watched from his ship. He had never seen anything like this before. These people had come from across the galaxy to help strangers. They asked for nothing in return. A small Delphani child ran up to Jake's ship. She was dirty and thin, but she smiled when she saw the medical supplies. Are you the medicine man? She asked in broken standard. Jake knelt down to her level. I'm just the delivery guy, he said. The real heroes are the doctors who will use this medicine to make people feel better. The child hugged his leg. Thank you, medicine man. Vexthara felt something break inside his chest. This child reminded him of the prey his people hunted. Small, defenseless, innocent. But here she was, safe and protected by humans who had never met her before. Jake walked over to Vexthara's ship. The Krillian commander came out to meet him. This is what we do, Jake said quietly. This is why we fight wars. This is why we risk our lives. Vexthara looked around the camp. He saw human doctors treating sick refugees. He saw human engineers building better shelters. He saw human teachers playing with children who had lost their parents. Your people could have conquered the galaxy, he said. You are strong enough. Conquering is easy, Jake replied. Building something better is hard. They stood together in silence, watching the volunteers work. Then Vexthara made a decision. I want to help, he said. Jake looked surprised. Are you sure? I have spent my whole life taking things away from others. Vexthara said. Maybe it is time I tried giving something back. They worked together for the rest of the day. Vexthara used his great strength to move heavy equipment. He helped set up new shelters. He even learned to be gentle with the refugee children, though his claws made it difficult. The children were fascinated by him. They had never seen a Krillian before. They asked him questions about his homeworld and his ship. They were not afraid of him, this amazed Vexthara. These children should have been terrified of him. His people were legendary hunters. But here they were, treating him like a friendly giant dot. As the day ended, Jake prepared to leave. He had other deliveries to make, other people to help. Will you come back? Vexthara asked. I always come back, Jake said. These people count on me. And if pirates try to stop you, Jake smiled, then I'll deal with them. It's part of the job. Vexthara watched Jake's ship disappear into the darkness of space. The human was flying, alone again, carrying hope to people who needed it. The Krillian commander made another decision. He would not be flying alone anymore. He sent a message to his ship's computer. Set course for the next refugee camp in this sector. Sir? His pilot asked. We have orders to return to Krillian space. Change of plans, Vexthara said. We have new orders now. From who? Vexthara thought about the Delphani child who had hugged Jake's leg. He thought about the human doctors working through the night to save lives. He thought about Jake Morrison, flying through dangerous space to deliver medicine to strangers. From my conscience, he said. 6 months later, Vexthara's ship had become a common sight at refugee camps throughout the sector. The huge Krillian warship would arrive with supplies and stay to help with construction projects. Other Krillians began to join him. First 1 ship, then 5, then 20. They called themselves the Guardian Fleet. The Krillian High Command was not pleased. They sent messages demanding that their warriors return home. But the messages went unanswered. The Guardians had found something more important than hunting. They had found purpose. Jake Morrison heard about the Guardian Fleet during one of his supply runs. He was not surprised. He had seen the look in Vexthara's eyes at the refugee camp. He had seen someone discovering what it meant to protect instead of destroy. The galaxy was changing. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years were starting to work together. Trade routes that had been closed by war were opening again. Children who had grown up as refugees were going to school and learning to build instead of fight. It was not a perfect peace. There were still wars, still pirates, still those who chose to hurt others. But now there were more guardians to stand against them. Humans were no longer alone in their role as protectors. They had found allies among the stars, and somewhere in the vast darkness of space, a small Delphani child was growing up safe and protected, dreaming of becoming a doctor like the humans who had saved her life. The predator had become the guardian. The hunter had learned to heal and the galaxy was a little bit safer because of it. In his final report to the Krillian High Command, Vexthara wrote, "We were wrong about everything. Strength is not about who you can defeat. It is about who you choose to protect. The humans taught us this. Now we must choose. Do we want to be remembered as the species that hunted the innocent, or as the species that learned to guard them? I have made my choice. My claws that once brought death now build shelters. My ship that once hunted prey now carries hope. I am no longer a predator. I am a guardian. And I have never been stronger." The message was never answered, but across the galaxy, more Krillian ships began changing course. They had heard about the Guardian Fleet. They had heard about the human named Jake Morrison, who flew alone into danger to help strangers. And they wanted to learn what it meant to be something more than just strong. They wanted to learn what it meant to be good.